initiatives. This is NPR.
This is All Things Considered on NPR News. I'm Clay Masters. Governor Tim Walz spoke by phone today with President Donald Trump, the first direct communication the two have had since Minnesota became the focus of the administration's immigration crackdown. President Trump described it as a very good call and says he seems to be on the same wavelength as Governor Walz. We'll turn now to Governor Tim Walz for his first one-on-one media interview in quite some time, and definitely since the dramatic and tragic events of this month. Governor, thank you for being here.
Yeah, well, Clay, thanks for having me. And to Minnesotans, one of the things is making sure that we're working for Minnesotans' safety, and working with the administration is challenging, I think folks know, but I would characterize, along with the president, I think it was productive.
Yeah, so let's start with that call. I understand that you initiated it. Is that correct?
We asked for it a while back, and this was the time they came through. I got a early morning call from the president's chief of staff, who we have been communicating with regularly, several times a day, myself or my team speaking with Susie Walz, and she said the president wants to speak with you, and they called back in to us, and we spoke for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Did the president make any firm commitments that the course of this immigration operation will change?
Well, I asked two things were clear. First of all, I asked that we have a fair and independent investigation into the murder of both Renee Good and Alex, and that we have to be able to do that. And he said, we'll look at that. We'll take a look at that. And I said, we just have to reduce these numbers. We started out with that. And he pledged that, look, I'm going to send Tom Homan in. We'll do things differently. He explained to me how he thought it was very successful in Louisiana, very successful in Louisville, which I shared with him, but ICE did not shoot anybody there, and the presence was much smaller and much more targeted, like they were doing actual ICE work. This is, as we've seen, massive numbers. So it was cordial. I think he understood this. I told him that this is unsustainable, and I said, quite honestly, no one wants this, and I hope that's true. No one wants this.
What about the investigation? I mean, you asked for him to allow state investigators into the fold regarding the deaths of Alex Preddy and Renee Macklin Good. What precisely did he say in the response?
He said he would look into it, and he said, look into it. I hear you. We'll look into it.
And what if that doesn't happen?
Well, then we'll keep pushing. I mean, this is, and I want to be very careful here. I don't want to, and one of the reasons that I am staying a little behind the scenes and working constantly on those calls is that part of this is about how you're viewed by this White House. I think the listeners here in Minnesota know that I'm somewhat of a lightning rod for this administration. I certainly don't want to be that, but I've had to be speaking up about the atrocities that we're seeing and pushing back. So at this point in time, the president certainly seemed earnest. He pledged to me that we would do this. As I said, we've been in communication over the weekend with his team pretty extensively. I'm understanding now that, and he said he would have Tom Homan in here, and we'll be in touch, I hope, later tonight. I'm understanding that Mr. Bovino and Kristi Noem are no longer going to be here. I would take that a step further. I would hope they're no longer in jobs because they've helped foster this. And we spoke a little bit, and I tried to make the case about Alex. I just spent a set-down hour with his colleagues.
And I noticed that at the beginning of yesterday's press conference and at the end, you brought it back to Alex Preddy. Yes. You also met with some of his coworkers. What do you take out of those conversations?
Yeah, and I made a pledge to his dad, Michael, and mom, Susan, that they said the world saw how he died. Any chance you have a platform to talk how he lived? Look, those ICU nurses at the VA are heroes to begin with. They're traumatized. About a dozen or so of his colleagues came. We sat down for about an hour. They just wanted to tell the story. They said, this is the coworker everybody liked. And they said, and they made, they're in grief, but they made jokes. And they said, I don't know if they'd say that about me, but Alex was the guy who would take your shift for you if you needed. He's the guy who would say, go eat lunch. I'll watch your patient. And they also talked about his passion around human rights. And they said that he had a moral compass that was rigid, that you had to do the right thing. And while you've heard the story that he was a firearm owner, legal firearms owner, and they said that was just part of who he was. He liked to shoot and those things, but he was adamant about all the rights that people have, and they just wanted to make sure that that story was told. And I think for these coworkers, it felt like this was just they just said he's one of us. He feels so Minnesotan, an outdoor guy, a mountain biker, likes to shoot firearms, but cared deeply about rights. And they said there was no way Alex couldn't be out there. He saw the injustice that was happening. He was out there. And they said when, most of them are traumatized because they saw their friend's death in real time. But they said the minute that the ICE agent pushed the woman, they knew that Alex would step between. And I think they knew that he would have never thought for his own safety or anything. His instincts as an ICU nurse and as who he was as a person stepped in between. So I think as Minnesotans, and I would echo that we haven't had time to grieve Renee Good, and we've heard so much about her. This really does come about our humanities. This is not about border security. It's not about what's being done. We've laid out the case that we do the right thing. We don't want criminals here, but we also recognize that someone coming here to find a better life should be treated with dignity, that Americans shouldn't be fearing for their lives to go out of their house just because of the color of their skin. And the atrocities we're seeing, and I think Donald Trump understands it too. That horrific scene that played out on Saturday morning, you could tell there was no professionalism to that. You could tell that this seemed personal for some reason, that running across and pushing people. And then I hope that we finally maybe broke the fever. The explanation from Kristi Noem was so far off that I think maybe this is what broke it.
I do want to circle back to, in your response a moment ago about the conversation about Greg Bovino. Did the president offer then to remove him then?
No.
Because, okay.
No, he didn't offer to remove him, but I just said your folks out here have no handle on this. There is no plan. This is not ICE enforcement. This is not targeted work. We've done that together. Look, if we have someone here who, whether they are documented or not, if they're a criminal, we work with our federal partners to get them off the streets. And I think the local media did a wonderful job of showing this. They're out there like grandstanding, taking credit for people that we arrested a long time ago. Just do the right job. This is nothing like that. And I think what's happened, and again, I'll let your listeners make up their own mind. Whether it was morality or bad optics and poll numbers, whatever has happened here, there is a definite change of tone. There is definitely a more collaborative tone. I want to make sure that I'm not jeopardizing that I'm going to take them for their word right now, that they're going to reduce this force. They're going to let us be part of a fair investigation. And these people, if it turns out that they're charged, they should come back to Minnesota and stand trial.
Now, I do want to ask you, are you planning to talk to Tom Homan, a top border and immigration advisor to the president? Is there a main message that you'll communicate to
Yes,
him?
get these folks out of here now. Go back to targeted immigration enforcement. Don't pick the 28th state that has the most undocumented folks versus those. Go to where it is and coordinate with us. We're willing to work with you on a task force. We always have. We're willing to continue. And as I think, again, I praise local media on this. The false information they're putting out, and I got to believe this. As governor, you don't know what all your agencies are doing. You trust people telling you. I don't think President Trump knew that we honored detainers from folks leaving prison. I truly don't believe, and I think once he heard that from me, he's like, well, that's helpful. So I think now maybe the president's saying, look, I don't know if Minnesota's, not what we were saying they were doing. They actually are doing it.
Taking a look at Congress right now, should the Senate Democrats allow that federal government funding bill to advance this
Absolutely
week?
not. Absolutely not. And I want to thank Senator Smith and Klobuchar, who were very early here, Senator Schumer, Senator Murphy, just others who have called me, Senator Padilla, all have called and committed to that. Absolutely not. They've got $70 billion already. This is what happens. We created an amassed, unmarked, unregulated, untrained personal army that was out there, and this was the inevitable end of it. So, no, put the guardrails around this, hold them accountable. I would also encourage that that Secretary Noem needs to be brought in front of Congress and answer for what she did here, and hold out on this. If the Republicans do this right, take the other spending bills, separate them out, and hold this one up.
Now, I do want to note that as we've been talking, the Associated Press reports that Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino and some agents are expected to leave Minneapolis tomorrow. That's according to AP sources there.
That is really good news, and I will acknowledge it here. That is the president following through, apparently, with our conversation.
So Republicans have said that your rhetoric is overheated and your comparisons to Nazi Germany are not helpful. You mentioned Anne Frank yesterday during that press conference. Do you see a role in dialing down the rhetoric in the state and in the country?
Look, I've been very clear about peaceful protesting. I've also been very clear since January that this type of extrajudicial or non-judicial type of activities are unacceptable. I see a strong parallel to the way these people are acting. I do know, and I want to thank, I think, Chris Medell stepping out of this governor's race. I want to note that the other candidates immediately blamed me and parroted Kristi Noem's language. I've never said anything like that, but I don't know if you watch that video, if you wouldn't come up with a comparison that these people are acting in a manner that is reflective of that time. I just have to use language that I think fits, that I can describe. It certainly wasn't law enforcement. It certainly wasn't callous behavior. It was the state, and in this case, the state being the federal government, killing an American citizen while they exercise their First Amendment rights. So I think if you're searching for people who are to blame here, it's pretty clear that that these ICE agents and the directive that they were receiving from Kristi Noem and Greg Bovino are at the top of that list.
Might seem like a blur, but at the beginning of this month, I was covering you over in the governor's reception room saying that you were not going to be running for a third term, that you ended your reelection campaign just 3 weeks ago today. You said it was to put more of your time into fighting fraud, was part of the answer there. Has there been any detectable progress there?
Oh, yeah. And I said on this one, I said I would fix it. This stuff, we had people steal from us. We've got folks try to make hay out of this. Absolutely. We're still getting court cases that we're moving forward. We've got a lot of folks that have now, I think, put those program integrity pieces in place. I'm feeling really good about that. This is, again, look, we have a well-run state. We have high quality of life. We did have people steal. We're now seeing other states had that too. But I said I didn't run to be called the governor. I ran to do the job. That's what I'm doing right now. And I'm really proud, whether it was COVID, George Floyd, or some of this. In this moment, I will assure Minnesotans, I'm going to get this out of us. We're going to get out of this thing. We're going to establish the sovereignty of the state of Minnesota. We're going to do things right. And we're going to spend some time mourning Renee and Alex. We're going to spend some time. I want to say this at some point. The reputation we have globally now is some of the toughest people standing up for what's right against odds that seem really stacked. But right now we're starting to hear news. These folks are leaving.
One more thing before you go about the legislative session upcoming, the first since the killing of Melissa Hortman.
Yes.
Today you ordered more weapons screenings at the Capitol. How much peace of mind do you think that offers to people that are still jittery about political violence?
Well, I think it's a step in the right direction. We all see there's common sense gun laws. And like I said, I've never been against gun ownership. I own them myself. You do them right. But I think, certain weapons in certain places, and I will note again, we are going to have a conversation about assault weapons. At least it's been made clear, and I will give Speaker Dameth credit for this, that she acknowledged she's the one person stopping the vote. We'll go back and have that conversation again. I think as far as visitors to the Capitol now, we're going to have the screenings. We're going to make sure that there's as safe as we can possibly make it. And in today's world, I think we have to do that. But my hope is that this broader conversation around safety, this broader conversation around community can be held a little more bipartisanly. I think that the move we made on the Capitol security today will be, I haven't heard yet, but I would assume that Republicans would be supportive of what we did today. They weren't last fall, but I think they will be now.
Governor Tim Walz, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Programming is supported by mHealth Fairview, combining the best of Fairview and the University of Minnesota to give Minnesotans access to leading doctors, researchers, and breakthrough medicine right in your backyard. More at mhealthfairview.org.
Support comes from Genesis of Minneapolis, featuring luxury vehicles with modern design, refined features, and smart technology. Learn more at genesisofminneapolis.com. Genesis of Minneapolis, luxury that dares to be different.
This is All Things Considered here on NPR News. I'm Clay Masters, and we just wrapped up a conversation there with Governor Tim Walz, kind of the first big interview that he's done for a while, since things have escalated so much in the last 3 weeks. I'm joined now in studio by NPR News politics editor Brian Bax. Brian, thanks for hopping in here real quick.
No problem, Clay.
What do you make of just the tone of that conversation and just the day that we've been having so far with hearing about the call that he had with President Trump?
We've had so many days where people were wound really tight, and today was seemingly the first day that there's kind of a exhale. I mean, there were not as many sharp exchanges between the leaders of our state and leaders of our country. In fact, they both took a positive vibe from a telephone call they had. We'll see if everyone follows through on what they said on that call. but it seems like there might be a slight turn of the corner ahead.
Yeah, and I would think it was noteworthy, too, in a lot of the governor's responses. He sounded a little optimistic, but it didn't feel like there was anything concrete out of the call.
When you told him that that Greg Bovino was moving along, and he said thank goodness or something of that to that effect, I think it was to him an affirming move that something has gotten through, something will change in the way that this operation is being done here in Minnesota, because it has been quite intense, and people are angry, and there's been these confrontations all around the city, although most protests have been peaceful. We want to make sure we underscore that most people out there have done their protesting in a peaceful manner, but there have certainly been clashes, and a lot of those clashes have gotten escalated by the tactics that we've seen from the federal agents.
And do you see, I mean, it's kind of a fool's errand, I guess, to spend too much time speculating on what might come of this, but we have been hearing the governor plead regularly in these press conferences for the president to respond, to talk to him. We heard Keith Ellison, the attorney general, yesterday in a press conference talking about his meeting with Vice President J.D. Vance when he was here. And A.G. Ellison kind of said it really wasn't worth a lot of a conversation. But this feels like something might be moving.
Yeah, and Clay, I think if you would ask the governor if he felt it was him or other factors, I think he would say other factors. There are a lot of Republicans, both here in Minnesota and around the country, that are getting very squeamish by the way that this is looked on television, by the way that people have reacted to the scope of the immigration action. And this shooting of Alex Preddy was different because it involved a lawful gun owner. And so then you had the NRA and gun groups weighing in and saying enough is enough. So, I mean, I think there's been this groundswell building, and something clearly has changed. Again, we have to see where it goes from here.
What else do you make of just the scope of the conversation? He talked about meeting with the parents, with people that Alex Preddy worked with. Do you feel like we're spending so much time talking about the fatal shootings, but there's also an underlying thing happening across the state as well with Operation Metro Surge that we've been reporting on for weeks.
Yeah.
And it's kind of moved a conversation about immigration to something completely different.
Right.
Maybe not completely different. But
I think the reason why the Alex Preddy and Renee McElwain Good deaths have resonated is because a lot of people can understand and they can see themselves. They were maybe out on the street, maybe they've been to a protest, maybe they've been driving by and wondered if they should do something when they see something that they don't feel is right, and they can connect with it. And a lot of times with some of the immigration arrests, it's more difficult for them to put themselves in that shoes, and for a lot of Americans who are going to be the important deciders in the upcoming elections, this is the moment where they really took notice, asking, what should I be doing? What is really going on? And is this what we wanted?
I'm interested just locally for Minnesotans listening too, just the upcoming Minnesota legislative session, everything that has happened, Minnesota being the focal point for where this big national conversation is taking place. As somebody that's thinking about this legislative session that's coming up, what are you anticipating this having any kind of, ripple effects on what happens at the State House?
Well, first of all, there's no must-do items in this legislative session, so that always lowers the expectations. But there's going to be a lot of talk about what the state should be doing to kind of erect guardrails around operations like this in the future. So expect there to be conversations. I don't know if they'll be able to advance anything. The political dynamics are really tough up there. But in an election year, in a legislative session year, people are going to want to grab onto the issues that they think that the voters want to hear about.
Any final thoughts in the last 20 seconds or so that we have together in the studio right now about that interview with Governor Walz?
I just think it was interesting because he's been, having to go between outraged and trying to pleading, and this he was almost just wanting to tell you everything that he's been through in the last few days and the last few weeks, and it really came through.
But really take kind of a guarded approach, I suppose, as well.
Taking stock, yeah.
NPR News politics editor Brian Baxt, thanks for your analysis.
You're welcome, Clay.